Hi there, this is Justin Krane, certified financial planner professional and founder of Krane Financial Solutions. Welcome to Money You Got This. So how can you really live? How? By uniting your business money, your personal money with your life and your business. Word up.
Krane Financial is an SEC-registered investment advisor. However, such registration does not imply a certain level of skill or training, and no inference to the contrary should be made. A copy of our current written disclosure statement discussing our advisory services and fees is available upon request. Information contained herein is for informational and illustrative purposes only, and general in nature. It should not be considered specific financial planning or investment advice, or a recommendation to buy or sell any type of securities or other investment products.
Hey everyone, welcome to Money You Got This. This show is brought to you by Krane Financial Solutions. I'm Justin Krane. I'm a certified financial planner professional. We offer investment management services and financial planning for entrepreneurs. I'm also the author of the book, Money You Got This. I'm psyched you're listening to the show. I want to give you this free report, 3 things multimillionaires do to grow their wealth. Just go to coolmoneyshow.com to grab it. That's coolmoneyshow.com to grab it. Thanks. Today, we have a special guest. This guy, Jeff Hayes, let me just tell you about him. We go way back since like 1802. I was walking into a deli. He had a book. It was called The Right Exit Strategy. I didn't even know who he was. He was by himself. He was like going Dutch with himself. It was at a deli in Studio City. I'm like, dude, you're reading that book. I'm reading that book too. And that was it. It was one book, one common thing we had in common, and the rest is history. So today, before I give Jeff like his whole bio and all that, I just want to welcome Jeff Hayes to the show. He is a sales ninja. Jeff, welcome.
Thank you, Justin. I didn't realize I was that old, but we do go back a ways.
That's right. All right. So who is Jeff? So let me give you the bio, guys. Jeff Hayes has been hooked on sales ever since he was 8 years old, selling light bulbs door to door. Now Jeff is a B2B sales expert and he loves music. He specializes in elevating the performance of B2B sales teams by showing them a smoother, more productive sales groove. He's made over 25 million cold calls and has sold $2.8 billion worth of products and services. That's just kidding. Millions, including SaaS, tech, professional services to small, medium, and Fortune-sized businesses. He grew up watching his dad grow a local services business with half a dozen salespeople into a top national brand with lots of sales teams, clients happy, and seeing the sales teams sell well. So Jeff's clients have grown their sales by 2, 3, 5 times using tech-enabled versions of many of the proven methods, processes, strategies, and techniques that Jeff's mentors share with him. Jeff is on a mission. He wants to go to the moon. That's the first thing. The second thing is he wants to transform 1 million B2B salespeople into revenue rock stars. Jeff, welcome you again.
Thank you, Justin. One clarification, 25,000 cold calls, not 25 million.
I think you really have made 25 million. Come on.
So your audience doesn't think I'm insane.
So I want to just come right out. And so the average person listening to the show is a business owner with like 5 to 10 employees, approaching 7 figures and easily over that as well. And their challenge, and I just actually dealt with this today with a client, is who is in charge of the sales? Is it the CEO, or is it like a team of people that they should hire, or one person? So talk to us about that. If you're an entrepreneur, a business owner, are you the one that is in charge of making the sales, doing the biz dev, or should you farm it out?
Up to a certain point, it does make sense for the business owner to be the sales guy, salesperson. And then at a certain point, unless you love selling, it makes sense to hand it off. But of course, in order to hand it off, you need to have a system in place that you can train somebody up on and a way to hold them accountable to their numbers. And so without having that system in place, it's tough to bring somebody in because otherwise they're getting a kind of haphazard training, and it comes down to nobody's going to be happy with the result.
Okay, let's first start with, how do you get to the point where you can go from, let's say, 500,000 to 5 million in sales without a team? Like, you're the owner of the business, you're doing the selling, and you're servicing the client or the customer. How do you get to that $5 million point if you don't have a team and it's just you?
Well, if you're lucky enough to have something that costs $1 million, you only got to make 5 sales. But for most of us, it's not that simple. I look at it like there's stages that a company goes through. There's these growth stages,
Yeah.
and what works in the first stage may not work in the second stage. It's probably not going to work in the third stage. So I see a lot of business owners, salespeople using tactics that used to work and don't work anymore, or they're not going to serve the growth goals of the company.
Okay, let's go deeper. What does the business owner have to do to go from 500,000 to 5 million when you're saying tactics when it comes to selling?
I wish I could give you a one answer fits all example. It really depends on the resources that they have available to them. And that includes things like their list. So can we use you as an example? Or
Sure.
so how do you go about generating leads?
I try to be more of the flower where the bee flies to me than me flying to the people. I try to attract people to me rather than spewing in for like, yeah. So that's my goal.
So you do a lot of networking, I'm guessing.
Sure.
Yeah. And you have cross referral,
Mm-hmm.
you share referrals with. I know we've talked about that in the past. And so if you were to want to like double the size of your annual revenue, would that tactic work? Would you just double the amount of networking you do, or would you need an additional tactic that would support that kind of growth?
It's an additional.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So maybe you bring on a junior BD person so you can go to twice as many networking events. And then what I see happen sometimes is the capacity of the system gets overwhelmed. Let's say you have one admin entering,
Yeah.
say you have a CRM and they're doing
Yeah.
all the data entry and the
Sure.
phone.
Sure.
So you need to, a tactic here would be to account for that potential overwhelm prior to hitting that moment. Another tactic would be to just let the overwhelm happen, acknowledge that it's going to happen. That's a great outcome and it's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
We need to solve it as we're getting to that overwhelm moment. Maybe you're using a spreadsheet for your CRM.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So
That
you
works
do,
great.
you're
That's
a lot in B2B, right?
right.
And the example that you gave me was B2C, like business to consumer, right? So is it the same thing if you're in B2B, how you would do it by just
Oh, that's a good point.
doing an and, or is it if you're B2B, do you have to buy the capacity first?
Typically what I see is, and this goes for a lot of the companies I work with, and maybe this even applies to you. Their core competency is the deliverable.
Sure.
Right? So they're a consulting firm. Let's say they do engineering, they do site studies. And so they're really good at that. And they've got people out there on site with clients, but they're not doing sales because the engineers say, I'm not a salesperson. So that would be an opportunity to look at tweaking the model a bit and supporting the engineers to get to the point where they're comfortable selling. And really, it comes down to just a tweak or two oftentimes. And then again, that problem is going to be the overwhelm of leads and prospects.
Yeah.
And you need to have a way to catch all those and support the follow-up that really is going to need to happen in order to make the sale.
Let's talk a little bit about making the sale, because I think this is where you write a lot, you talk a lot about it, and that it's more of a like an experience. It's a journey. It's a path. You don't just wake up and just sell like right away. But before I do that, we have a question from the Peanut Gallery. Is that a real plant behind you?
It is a real plant.
Everybody listening and watching, that plant is alive. And there's also a guitar behind Jeff as well. He may be playing in a few minutes.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So, I mean, the obvious question is, what are the mistakes that we make when it comes to selling? And how can we get better at it?
The mistakes that we make, in my experience, in
That's
my
right.
market,
Mm-hmm.
is that people talk themselves out of their ability to sell. That's one thing I see a lot. Another thing I see a lot is not anticipating a shorter sales cycle than they realistically expect. So they get frustrated, and that negative feedback creates an impression that they suck at selling.
Mm-hmm.
They might be great at selling, but they just ask at the right moment, or, you know, there's a lot of factors. So you got to consider the buyer's experience with purchasing what you're selling in a B2B sales setting.
Oh, this is what I want to talk about. So can we unpack number one, you know, the your mindset of your ability to sell, whether you're good at it, and just that whole inner game of selling?
Sure. I'll give you an example from my bio. And so how I came to be selling light bulbs door to door at 8 years old. My father was, he grew this business. He was a master sales guy. He had a thing I called Jack's Magic Question. And I learned about that much later on. But he had a way of engaging people's imagination that made them realize that they had a big problem and that he was the guy who could solve it. So when I was out selling light bulbs, the first go round, I would knock on the door. This was the 70s. So
Were you wearing those rings back then in the day? Those two gold amazing rings. Everybody, you got to see these rings.
But I was rocking the gold chain.
Hold them up so we can all see them. Look at these things. This guy's made of gold, people. Listen to him. All right, keep going. Sorry.
This one was my dad's. Just
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
the pinky one.
Nice.
Yeah. So I'd knock on the door. I'd be in my like t-shirt and shorts, whatever, and they'd answer the door, whoever answered the door, and I'd say, "Hi, I'm here to sell you light bulbs." And they'd ask, "Well, who are you? You know, how did you get here? Who are?" It was very confusing, right?
Yeah.
I had no success. I sold one light bulb that day to my best friend's mom.
Nice.
She felt sorry for me. So I stormed home, and my dad saw how pissed off I was. It was a Saturday. And he said, "What's up, son? How was your sales day?" I said, "Well, nobody's buying anything." And he said, "Well, tell me more." I said, "Yeah, Mrs. Johnson bought one light bulb. That's it." He's like, "Well, that's great. You sold a light bulb. You got to start somewhere." And that, of course, made me even madder. But over the course of that conversation, he asked me, "What do you say when they answer the door?" And I was like, "I don't know what I just." So he's like, "Words fall out of your mouth, right? You don't have an approach. So let me give you an approach." His approach was, "Hi, I'm Jeff Hayes with Cub Scout Troop 757. I'm brightening your neighbor's day. Can I brighten yours too?"
Mm-hmm.
And then I sold out in a week or so. And so that's what hooked me on selling. I thought I sucked at it too. Nobody bought anything, but the only thing I was doing wrong was my approach wasn't addressing their need. I wasn't engaging their imagination with the possibilities of what the product I was offering could do for them. And I think that's something a lot of people miss. They sell features rather than the addressing the need that the prospect has.
We could end right there, people. That's it. That is so cool, Jeff. So why do people guess what the buyer's need is?
That's a great question.
Why don't they ask or do research or think?
Well, it's asking. Every prospect is different. Every situation is unique. Unless you're selling, vacuum cleaners to,
Mm-hmm.
I can't even, these days, every situation is unique.
Yeah.
So it comes down to those questions. Go ahead.
No, I'm going to keep going. I don't want to interrupt you. I've got a part 2 to this one.
So something I see a lot of people miss is the qualifying process. And this is another thing that leads to people thinking they're not good at selling. Because they end up spending a lot of time trying to sell to people and companies who aren't actually qualified. So there's 5 things, the 5 sort of basic questions of qualifying. There's a lot more to it, but the acronym is BANKed. So it's budget, authority, need, goals, timeline. Once you know BANKed, budget, authority, needs, goals, timeline. Once you know those things, and by the way, that's like a potentially hours-long conversation right there. But once you know those things, you know if they're a fit for what you're selling. And then they get more comfortable with you because you're interested in them. In order to sell well, you need to care about your prospects. What you really need to do is help them make the best possible buying decision.
And also help them feel good about the decision of buying.
Right. I mean, it's tough to make somebody feel good, but one way to do that is to ask questions. What's important to you? What are your goals? What's your 5-year plan look like? What's your 2-year plan look like? Where do you want to be in 6 months?
This is the rant part of the podcast show. Why do I get all of these emails cold from people immediately going in for the sale? LinkedIn connection. We help financial advisors do this. This is our offering. Can we set up a time we're going to be in your area? Like, what do they really think that this works? It's so lame. These LinkedIn connections in these cold emails. Idea. And then it's all automated with email follow-ups, just bumping this up on your email chain. Did you read this? Like, it just, oh my God, I can't stand them. Like, why? Who's training these people? And can we get you in there?
I'd love it. I'd love a shot at that business. But yeah, I think a lot of it is that there aren't people behind those emails. And when you respond, it's going to a centralized place. Right. So they're sending 1,000, 10,000 emails a day. And I read about this on the sales sort of channels that I pay attention to. And some people are expected to make, 100, 200 outreaches in a day.
Yeah.
I mean, if I make 1 outreach in a day to a new prospect, that's a good day. It takes me a lot of time to prepare. And then it takes me a lot of time to follow up.
I want to go back to part 2 about the mistakes. You talked about the sales cycle, how it takes longer. So I'm a financial advisor. I work with lots of clients that are entrepreneurs and business owners. And yeah, the sales cycle is longer for some of them. So they're having to invest more money in marketing, and the cash flow goes out and it doesn't come in as quickly as they think. And maybe they have to iterate off of their marketing or whatever. So just the whole cycle of money going out versus money going in, and the success and the ROI gets widened out, and it hurts their cash flow. And it sounds like you're talking about the same thing where it's like, okay, we think it's going to be shorter than it really is. It's going to take longer. So the question is, will it just take can we do anything about it? Or do we just have to accept the fact that, look, this is it. This is our sales cycle. It's our business model. And this is it.
So part of being an entrepreneur is being optimistic, right? And that works in our favor a lot. But in the case of marketing and selling, it works against us. And I'm not saying to be negative. I'm saying to take that middle path, show up, keep showing up. Don't take the refusal personally. My dad used to say, there's no such thing as a rejection. It's only a refusal. It's a no for now. So if I take that perspective and look at it as no for now, then following up in 6 months is just part of what I need to do to make the sale. So what I'd like to see people, the kind of situations that you're asking about, what I'd like to see is a smaller upfront investment, lower expectations, and then the persistence. I call it gentle persistence of just showing up. You know, I've had, when I've sold for other people, I sold IT at one point. And I'd have people say, never call me again. And the first couple times I heard that, I was like, oh my God, you know, I've really offended this person. Clearly, this is a no-go. And then as I went along, I realized, you know, it might be worth checking in with them because maybe they were just having a bad day. And I ended up making sales from people who told me they didn't want to hear from me.
So how do you check up with people? How do you follow up with them? Is it systems and tech and all
Yeah,
that?
I have a system. I use a CRM
Mm-hmm.
and I set activities.
Sure.
And the activity is complete, I set the next activity. So I have a workflow that I go through when I'm doing my outreach that just automatically reminds me when to touch people.
Got it. I'm curious because I don't, you know, when you're selling, someone can say no. If you look at all of the no's and you go down the path of always following up with the no's, and you have another option of never following up with the no's and only nurturing the yeses and the maybes, what's the math on what's better? Because I know for me, I don't do well. Like if someone says no, in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm not following up. I might add them to my newsletter and get their permission, but that's it. But it sounds like what you're saying is no, Justin, maybe some of those no's could go into yeses, but I'm also thinking like, I come from a family of a bunch of New Yorkers. We're looking for things to happen in less than 4 seconds. I'm joking, but you know what I mean? It's like, how do you like, for me, it hasn't worked as well as the people that are interested right away, or would be like, dude, I totally want to work with you, but I have to table this for now. I don't really, I mean, when I was in my 20s, yeah, I followed up on the nose, but now I don't.
Maybe you just don't need to. Maybe your business, I mean, are you reaching your goals? Are you doing what
Yeah.
Why put yourself through the torture of following up with the no's, except for the fact you might be able to grow? And have you ever thought about bringing someone in to follow up on those no's for you?
Yeah. So I have. Can you just give me the banked acronym one more time?
Budget,
Yeah.
authority, needs, goals, timeline.
Yeah. So what if they don't have the budget?
Timeline.
Yeah, timeline. Yeah, but what if
So
they
here's
never
the
have the
problem.
budget? Then
Well,
then they're out, right?
Then they're not qualified. Then
Yeah.
you're chasing a prospect that isn't qualified.
Okay, so can you talk about that?
Well, I see it all the time, especially in my market. Again, people excel at the deliverable side and they've never really been trained to sell. Maybe they got sent to a sales seminar and their boss is like, okay, you know,
Yeah.
go sell. But the qualification process is so important. Is there something specific you'd like me to talk about?
No, just go deeper. Talk to me like if you're talking like we're at Starbucks and you're having a cup of coffee and you're like, dude, you got to learn how to qualify people. And I see this all. It's just teach us more about that. How do you qualify people? What are the questions you ask? All that.
It varies from industry and
Sure.
industry. It comes down to, what do you need to know in order to generate an amazing client? So that goes back to your ideal client profile.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what an amazing client looks like? If you
Sure.
don't know that, then it's really tough to qualify. Then it really
Mhm.
just comes down to those 5
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah.
But if you do know who you're looking for, that makes the qualifying process much more meaningful, because your prospect is going to experience the conversation as almost like therapy,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to be able to guide them to a place where they can feel good, kind of what you were saying before, where they can feel good about the decision they're going to make, whether it's to go with you or not. Again, I see the salesperson's, the seller's, I see the seller's mission as helping your prospect to make the best possible purchase decision, not to make the sale. Now, that's contrary to that sort of old school style of grinding and
Mm-hmm. Sure.
closing deals. But you, me, we have to deal with the client services side as
For
well,
sure. Yeah.
handing it off. So it's extra important for people like us to be really clear about who we want to bring into our fold. And then the question becomes, what do we need to know about folks in order for them to really meet that qualification and potentially be a highly qualified prospect? And then it's about, putting the offer out there,
Sure.
explaining what it is, how what we do is different from everybody else.
You kind of answered my next question, but you've written a lot about control, like what can you control, what can you not control? So is that a mistake of like in the sales process, in the sales cycle, we're trying to do things that are out of our control, and then it's like it's a giant waste and we get nowhere, and we're like, oh, selling sucks, or I'm bad, or whatever.
I was just on a call with a guy who had purchased a franchise, and the sales training he got was from the franchisor, the owner of the franchise.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy apparently told all the people who were franchisees in this training that they should be making 3 cold calls on the way to an appointment with a prospect. So if you set up a meeting, on the way to the meeting, you better make 3 cold calls. Like, that's so contrary.
Yeah.
What, and I'm going to get to your question of control. What this franchise owner is suggesting is that we pump ourselves up,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and it's totally natural. It's what we're taught culturally in Western society. We're taught like, I can do it. So really the question is, can I do it? Can I
Mm-hmm.
close this deal? Can I show up for my prospect meeting in a way that represents the brand that I'm selling? So to get to your question of control, I meditate, I do breathing exercises. I have a whole sales warm up that I go through. You might have seen that on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
And then I let go of the outcome. And I think my prospects feel that, right? I'm not attached to them becoming a client. What I'm doing, what I'm there to do, is to help them make a purchase decision. They may not make it today. That means that they're probably not going to make it today when they're in front of my competitor. So it becomes a question of who follows up.
Mm-hmm.
If they're really going to buy, it becomes a question of who follows up with the most, I like to call it, gentle persistence, because that's the kind of client I want. If I want a hard ass client who's like gonna complain, who's maybe they've got a bunch of money to spend on my thing, but the energy I put out is going to attract the kind of client
Yeah, exactly.
that
Yeah.
comes in. So if I let go of control of trying to control the outcome and just stay curious and appreciative, I'm going to attract the kind of clients that I'm looking for.
I love it. So, as we wrap up, tell us, if there's anything that you wanted to talk about that you haven't covered, just give us an idea of yours that you think is worthwhile.
All right, here's my idea. People make selling really complicated, really hard. And yeah, there is a lot of process, especially if you have a long sales cycle.
Mhm.
And it is important to be an expert in the product and understand what the customer, the client is going to get. Yeah, all that's complicated and it's a lot to keep track of in your head, but selling is really simple, right? A person has a need, a company has a need. I happen to show up at the right moment because so much of sales is timing.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, my prospect asks for a referral. I'm the guy that gets referred. I meet them at a networking event. They read a LinkedIn post. For whatever reason, I show up at the right moment. And then I just stay present. All that expertise, all that process should not be evident to the prospect. They should have, it's almost like a first date, right? Would you show up for a first date with like out of breath, sweating bullets, trying to take every ounce of air out of the room by explaining, over explaining, trying to engage? Just let them talk, ask a question. My dad used to say, telling ain't selling. How simple is it just to not say anything?
Yeah.
Ask a question, give them space to answer.
Yeah. This is great, Jeff. This is so cool to hear you and to talk and to do this live on a recording where people can learn about you and your company. So where can we send people for more information to learn about you?
Well, I've put together an offering for your audience.
Mhm.
It's a guide to networking. I
Okay.
call it Networking Navigator. So I'm working on the landing page still. Maybe I'll have it up by the time this goes out there, but you can always reach me at Jeff, Jeff, at sellwell.solutions.
So, well, that's Jeff at sellwell.solutions. Okay, good.
So if you want a copy of that, just send me an email. I'll forward it along.
Good.
And yeah.
Yeah, maybe when you have a link for that, we'll put it in the notes and then people can grab it there.
That'd be great.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jeff, for coming on.
Thank you, Jeff.
You're amazing, and looking forward to having everyone listen to this. It will be great.
I enjoy you too. Thanks for the opportunity.
You got it. Have a question? Want to get in touch with us? Need some help and advice with your finances? Just go to coolmoneyshow.com and reach out to us. That's coolmoneyshow.com.
Krane Financial Solutions is an SEC-registered investment advisor. However, such registration does not imply a certain level of skill or training, and no inference to the contrary should be made. A copy of our current written disclosure statement discussing our advisory services and fees is available upon request. Information contained herein is for informational and illustrative purposes only and general in nature. It should not be considered specific financial planning or investment advice, or a recommendation to buy or sell any type of securities or other investment products. No investment decision should be made based solely on any information provided herein. We do not provide legal, accounting, or tax services. We recommend that all investors seek out the services of competent professionals in any of the aforementioned areas. Certain information provided has been obtained from third-party sources that we believe reliable. However, it's not been independently verified and is not guaranteed.